This is my first ever post to Reddit. I am only posting these experiences now because something has been following me since I was little, and it has found its way to my new apartment. All of the experiences below are completely true. This post will be organized by houses and apartments. Number 1. Old farmhouse. In this house, I experienced the most paranormal activity. My parents and younger brother all witnessed these events, so I know they are true. My dad is a cop and at this point was working all of the terrible rotating shifts that all new rookies would be given. This meant that my mom was often at home alone with us kids. Especially at night, little things started happening at first. Picture frames would swing on the walls like someone had brushed their hands against them. Lights would go on and off for no reason. We would hear footsteps upstairs when no one else was home, and our dog would get locked in random rooms without explanation. The first truly terrifying experience we had was when my brother was around 3. He was tucked in for the night while my mom and I watched TV. I had gone into his room with my mom to say goodnight and had watched her close the window, place the rocking chair near his bed, close the door, and turn off the lights. We went down to the TV and heard whispering noises coming from the baby monitor she had in his room. As we listened more, we heard a loud shriek and banging noises. We both rocketed up from the couch and ran to his room. The light was on. The rocking chair was next to the now open window, rocking back and forth, and the door was wide open. I had never seen my mom more terrified before. My brother was fast asleep under the covers and was far too small to ever move the rocking chair himself. After that night, I had terrible night terrors where I would wake everyone up, screaming and throwing things. I would sleepwalk and talk to someone in my closet called Sally and would hear voices all day, every day. My parents witnessed objects moving around me with no visible cause, would hear the voices talking back to me while I was sleepwalking, and would hear me talking in a low guttural voice that was not my own. The event that made us move was when we had gone out for groceries in midwinter after a fresh snowfall. We were about an hour getting groceries, so there was enough snow to cover all our footprints. My dad had closed and locked the front door, had turned off the lights, and because it was winter, the windows were all closed and locked. Some of the windows were even painted shut. When we got back from groceries, every single window was open. Music was blasting from the stereo. The front door was off its hinges, and the lights were all on. At this point, my dad told us to stay in the car while he called a buddy of his on shift to help him clear the house. My dad went up to the house. He noted that there was absolutely no footprints leading to or from the door. None in the yard or backyard either. There was no one in the house and no signs of anyone ever being there. The most terrifying part of this event was that the painted windows had been ripped open. The wood had splintered, and we all agreed that no human could have had the strength to do that. On top of being painted shut, my dad had also nailed some shut too to avoid a draft. These windows were opened as well. We moved after that, and I believe that whatever was in that house followed me to the next 5 places. Number 2. Tiny city home. At this house, we didn't experience anything too frightening until the end of our stay there. Little things happened throughout the first 3 years that spooked us a bit, but were harmless. Light switches would click on and off while we watched. The dog would bark and growl at nothing in corners and at the ceiling. My dad would always lose his keys and they would show up in the crawl space that we had under the house. I was always terrified of that crawl space. None of us would ever go near it without someone else being there. When I would sleepwalk, I would always end up in the crawl space with the lights off. After the first 3 years, my mom got really sick and almost died 3 times on the operating table. With all the stress of watching her go through this, whatever was in the house got stronger and more bold. We would wake up to find pictures of our family smashed or on the ground, scratches on the door to the crawl space, and would see shadow figures out of the corner of our vision. Once, when I was taking a bath, I was held under the water by my head from what felt like a hand. I knocked all the bottles off of the tub, which alerted my dad. He came in and swears up and down to this day that he saw a disembodied hand holding me under. After my brother got pushed down the stairs, we finally decided to move. Number 3. Country Haven Home. My parents never saw the house before they bought it. It was cheap and close to my dad's new posting, and that's all that mattered. My parents currently still live there. It has 5 levels, including 2 basement levels. I only lived at this house for 3 years, but had multiple frightening experiences that haunt me still. The most notable was when I was home alone with my dog. I was watching TV in the basement and decided to go get a snack. I left my dog laying on the couch sleeping. As soon as I hit the kitchen, I heard Charlie barking and snarling at something in the basement. He had never made those sounds before, so I was rightly scared crapless. I called my dad and begged him to come home because I thought someone was in the house. He told me to run out the front door and go to the neighbors. The problem with that was that I would have to run past the basement and whatever was down there to get to the front door. Even running to the side door had the same issue, so I booked it. As I ran past the basement, I saw a shadowy figure standing in front of my dog. Charlie had all the hair on his back standing up. When Charlie saw me running, he hightailed it out of there too and joined me at the neighbors. My dad came home with his gun and went through the house. No one was there. A few days after that experience, I moved out to go to university. My parents haven't had any paranormal experiences since I moved out. Number 4. Dorms. In the dorms I lived in, it was apartment style. We lived in a 5-bedroom detached house. I had 4 roommates, 2 bathrooms, and a kitchen for us to cook in. All of my roommates experienced their own paranormal events while living with me here. One of them didn't believe in ghosts before, but now does. We would hear people talking in the vents when we were all in the common area, not talking. The scariest conversation we heard coming from the vents was someone screaming at their friend to fuck off. We were all sitting in the kitchen, not talking because we were eating. No one else was in the house with us, and we all ran from the house and sat on the porch until it was time to go to bed. One of my roommates experienced her alarm going off at 3 a.m. every morning for the entire year. Even when it was unplugged with no batteries, it would go off. All of us would see creepy shadows and people walking through the house and up the stairs. One roommate had her boyfriend run out of the house at 4 a.m., scared shitless. He never told us what happened and he never came back. Our landlord at one point thought we had an illegal 6th person staying with us because she would always see someone staring out of the attic window. The attic was always locked. The worst experience at this house was when all 5 of us were standing in the kitchen and we heard laughing coming from the vents. As we were frozen, listening, the fridge door whipped open and the kettle turned on simultaneously. We all stayed in our cars that night. Number 5 and 6. My own 2 apartments. I decided to move into my own apartment for the duration of school because of health issues and that the activity that scared all my roommates. I had to move from the first apartment about 3 months in because I found black mold. My landlord moved me to a different unit. In the first apartment, I only experienced light switches going on and off, my kettle being turned on in the middle of the night, and noises I couldn't explain. In my current apartment, however, I have recently been experiencing feelings of heaviness, and I'm terrified constantly. It feels like someone mean is watching me and wants me to fail. Because of COVID, I am now confined to my apartment and working from home. In multiple Zoom meetings, my coworkers have asked who is in the room with me. I am alone. I have no pets or roommates, but my coworkers swear up and down that they see someone walking back and forth in the frame. I have had clients ask who else is talking to me because they can hear someone in the background speaking. My boyfriend has noticed me talking to someone in my sleep while I'm sitting up in bed. My boyfriend had an experience that changed his mind completely about ghosts. He was sitting at the kitchen table while I was cooking and heard someone yell into his ear to get out. He freaked out and turned around just to have a potted plant thrown at his head. He refuses to stay at my place and tries to limit the amount of time I spend at his to avoid inviting whatever is attached to me into his place. I honestly am so done with whatever this is. I'm trying to ignore it, but needed to vent and get these things off my chest. These are my experiences. I hope that you enjoyed reading about them. Before I start this, I just want to note that even though I strongly believe in the supernatural, I still look for a logical explanation before I write it off to ghost. And these 2 events are short and far apart, but I think I can write about them together. So around 2018, I was seeing a girl who lived 2 hours north from where I lived. Now, I only visited her house only a few times, but I remember it vividly. She lived with her mother in a very rural town up north, and you'd have to drive some more to a small log cabin they lived in. It was middle of winter, and the whole place looked like a fairy tale. Log cabin in the woods, big snowflakes falling, and everything visible because of the snow. She told me how her house is haunted and that in the night she would hear footsteps in the living room above her. I should mention she had her room in the basement that couldn't be her mother's cause she would often be away for work. But not only were there footsteps, also knocking, replying to what she asked. She even told of instances where her router would get unplugged in the middle of the night, as well as hearing footsteps and knocking. Not only that, they told me how once they were taking a hike through the forest when stumbling upon 11 mounds of dirt not far from their house, as if something or someone was buried there. They did say that it could possibly be horses, for they had farms in the area. So fast forward to the night of my stay, around 11 p.m., bit after her mother went to bed, we began to hear footsteps right above our heads. I couldn't believe it, but being the scaredy cat that I am, I was telling myself it was just pipes or vents. Around 12, we went to bed, and surprisingly, I fell asleep fast and sound. For reference, The way the room was positioned, there was a 2-meter hallway leading from the stairs to the rest of the basement. Right at the end of the hallway, beside the wall, was the bed. We were sleeping our heads at the end of bed, closest to the hallway, so you could see down it. Around 3 or 4 a.m., I woke up. I was confused to why I woke up. I guess just in between dreams, or I felt something. I turned my head to where the basement stairs were, and looking right back at me was a black figure. I froze. I knew what I saw was real, cause I knew for a fact I was awake at that point, but I was told whatever it was, it never went into the basement, so I remember being calm about it, just looking it down. It was a black silhouette of a man looking around the corner, so I saw only the upper body. As we looked at each other for a good minute, it slowly pulled back around the corner. Shaken up a little, I closed my eyes almost instantly, passing out. That morning, I told my partner what had happened, and she shrugged it off as a normal occurrence. I don't believe it was the last time I saw it though. Later on, I was eating in the kitchen, and out of my peripherals, I kept seeing a black silhouette of a man in the corner of the kitchen. But every time I looked at the corner, nothing was there. I thought I was just paranoid and seeing things. I should also mention that my partner's mother told me that they have 2 domovoys attached to her. For those who don't know, a domovoi is a spirit from Russia folklore who lives in your house and protects it from fires and keeps it clean, while also sometimes taking small things to mess around. She told me a story from years back where she left for work for a few days and her husband at the time stayed at her house. About a day or 2 later, called her yelling and freaking out about 2 creatures not leaving him alone there and following him around the house, appearing as these hideous creatures and even shoving him. She told me her mother or grandmother, I can't remember now, was from a line of witches, so that could be linked to why those things occurred. I know it sounds crazy and all over the place, but it happened and I'm recalling it to the best of my ability. Fast forward to 2020, I'm seeing a different person and live in a different town, but there was one more event that will forever be in my mind. We were in their house in the attic. It's a living space along with storing some boxes. I was asking a bit about the history of the house and previous owners, for they mentioned before the house had troubling history. It was night and the lights were dim, so I thought something spooky would be fun since I'm a horror junkie. They told me how 3 or 4 people died in this house and actually someone hung themselves in that same attic. At that moment, I felt uneasy and a chill. I started looking around the room, scared to see a ghost. I looked at a corner, 3, maybe 4 meters away from where we were sitting. It was a silhouette of a woman in a dress, pressed up against the corner. I couldn't see much detail, but she had long black hair and a white dress. I'm not sure how, but I'm certain it had 2 angry eyes looking at me. I thought it was my eyes playing tricks on me, but my partner jumped up yelling my name. We shined the light into the corner, but as cliché as it is, nothing was there. I don't remember why we stayed there longer, but I remember feeling the air get heavy and difficult to breathe, and like 2 icy hands were touching my shoulders and neck. We rushed downstairs and my partner grabbed sage. After using the sage on the attic, it felt normal again, but we never spoke of this or the history of the house again. There were no more occurrences with me, but I don't think it means never in my life. I'm sitting in the attic right now, writing this. My cat is beside me, and I was told that they ward off bad spirits. Those are my 2 encounters, which I did my best to recount and retell. Maybe you can tell me what I experienced or encountered.